The sunlight spilled into my perfumery like a golden river, brushing against bottles of amber and violet glass, stirring the scents of jasmine, sandalwood, and vanilla in the cool morning air. I had grown up in this world, my family's legacy, a craft of delicate artistry, passion, and precision. Every drop, every mixture was sacred. I poured myself a cup of tea, as I did every morning, inhaling the familiar aroma, expecting the comfort it had always brought. Dominic was already waiting at the table, a faint smirk on his face that had once seemed charming. He had never understood this world. Not the finesse, not the patience, not the devotion required to create a fragrance that spoke. "You seem tense," he said, reaching across to adjust the napkin on my plate. His hand lingered unnaturally long, a touch that should have been familiar, loving, but felt invasive. "I'm focused," I replied, sipping my tea. Something was off. A subtle metallic tang beneath the sweetness that shouldn't have been there. My eyes narrowed. Dominic's smile faltered for a microsecond before he recovered. "You've always been too sensitive, Eva. Too attentive to small details." Small details. I should have trusted them. I don't remember the collapse itself, only the sudden weight pressing down on me, my vision narrowing, the world dissolving into a haze of cold and distant whispers. The paramedics shouted, but their voices were muffled. My heart stopped. And in those terrifying 3 minutes, I felt everything at once. The warmth of my family's legacy, the betrayal that had quietly grown, and a vision of my ancestors, faces stern, pointing their fingers toward the bed where Dominic stood. "The snake in your bed," they whispered. When I awoke in the ambulance, revived with a rush of adrenaline and medical intervention, the realization hit me like a hammer. I had been poisoned. Slowly, methodically, by the man I had once trusted, the man who had claimed he loved me. My senses, already refined, sharpened beyond what was natural. I could smell the faintest trace of toxins, the faint metal of arsenic lingering on silverware, in the air, even in Dominic's very breath. I made a choice then. I would survive, not as the naive, trusting Eva Rose, but as a predator cloaked in civility. Every fiber of my being recalibrated. Cold, clinical, methodical. Every ounce of betrayal burned into me, sharpening my mind, sharpening my heart. I returned home that evening, playing the part of weakness, of lingering illness, watching Dominic's face pale with concern. Or was it triumph? He didn't know I was reborn. He didn't know I had seen him for what he truly was. The snake in my bed would soon learn that the Rose legacy wasn't so easily taken. And for the first time since my near-death, I felt the calm precision of control, the quiet thrill of revenge brewing, ready to be unleashed. I watched Dominic from the edge of the parlor, pretending to be fragile, my hand delicately clutching the silk scarf he had insisted I wear. He moved with a confidence that reeked of arrogance, completely unaware that I had seen through his mask. I could smell the faint, sharp trace of arsenic in the silver flask he carried everywhere. His little security blanket and his weapon all in one. Lila, my so-called assistant, flitted around him, her laughter fake and high-pitched. My senses detected something off immediately. Perfume masking over something fouler, a chemical tang in the air I hadn't noticed before. Dominic and Lila were planning, whispering, plotting, while I, the supposed victim, listened and absorbed. "They'll never see it coming," Dominic murmured, his voice low, cruel, almost triumphant. "By the time Eva is gone, the estate, the perfume house, all ours. Every last drop of her legacy will belong to me." Lila giggled, brushing her hand over a crystal decanter. "It's perfect. She'll never suspect a thing." My chest tightened, not with fear but with calculation. Every word, every motion, every scent was now ammunition. My ancestors' warning echoed in my mind. The snake in your bed. I had survived once. I would survive again. And this time I would hunt. Later that evening I called Cassian Black. He didn't ask questions, didn't scold. He simply arrived, silent and alert, as though he had always known what was happening. His presence was grounding, a calm within the storm. "Eva," he said, his eyes scanning the room, taking in Dominic, Lila, and the faint chemical scent in the air. "You're alive, but they won't stop until they've taken everything." "I know," I replied, keeping my voice soft but precise. "And I need your help. I need proof. I need every trace of what he's done documented, medically, legally, permanently." Cassian nodded, his jaw tightening. "We do this carefully. One mistake, and they could kill you again, or worse." "I'm ready," I said. And I meant it. There was no trembling in my voice now. No uncertainty. Only clarity, precision, and cold resolve. Together we mapped out the plan. I would continue to appear weak, dependent, fragile. Dominic would keep underestimating me. And while he did, Cassian would quietly gather evidence. Medical tests, chemical analyses, photographic proof. Every trace of arsenic, every subtle manipulation in my morning routine, every deceit by Lila would be documented. Trusting him felt easy, instinctive. Cassian didn't make me feel weak or incapable. He didn't patronize me. He simply moved beside me, silent and steady. His skills complementing my heightened senses. Slowly, silently, our partnership formed. Not of romance yet, but of strategy, of shared purpose, of life and death trust. That night, as Dominic's laughter echoed from the study, I inhaled the air carefully, detecting the faint metallic tang of arsenic lingering on his cuff. The truth was now in my hands. The hunt had begun. And the snake in my bed would not see the rose strike coming. The morning air in the perfumery carried the usual blend of jasmine, rosewood, and vanilla, but today it mingled with a faint, bitter undertone I hadn't noticed before. I inhaled slowly, letting my heightened senses sweep over everything, searching for anomalies. Dominic's presence in the room was subtle, yet unmistakable, an invisible cloud of deception that my instincts picked up immediately. He poured himself a cup of tea and smiled at me, the same practiced, charming grin that had once made my heart flutter. But now I saw it for what it was, a mask hiding greed, ambition, and malice. "Feeling better today?" he asked, leaning slightly toward me. His silver flask caught the light, a glint that now screamed danger. I recognized it immediately, the faint metallic scent of arsenic barely masked by the expensive leather covering. I sipped from my cup, careful to avoid the danger. Every motion was calculated, every breath a test. Dominic didn't notice my evasive maneuver, too confident in his plan, too certain of his control. Later, in the quiet of the lab behind the perfumery, I began my tests. Using my refined olfactory skills, I traced the tiniest traces of toxins, mapping them meticulously. Each drop of arsenic, each residue on silver and porcelain, was catalogued in my mind, and written down carefully for Cassian to verify. Cassian arrived later that afternoon, silent as always, his presence filling the room with calm authority. "What have you found?" he asked, eyes scanning the surfaces, sniffing the air almost unconsciously. I held up a tiny silver flask. "This contains his poison. I've mapped the traces in the kitchen, on the teacups, even on the handles of his desk drawers. Lila is complicit. She's been handling it too." Cassian frowned. "It's meticulous. Too meticulous. He underestimated you." I allowed myself the faintest smile, a dangerous glint in my eyes. Underestimation is his greatest mistake. He thinks I'm fragile. He thinks I'm ill. But every time he touches me, he leaves a trail. Every whisper, every motion. It's all recorded in scent. I know everything. We moved silently through the house that evening, testing the environment, confirming traces, and documenting each step. Cassian's hands occasionally brushed mine as we passed tools or vials. I felt the spark of comfort and trust in those small contacts, a subtle warmth amidst the cold strategy. Later I sat in my laboratory reviewing my notes. Dominic believed he was ahead of me, preparing for a funeral that would never come. I imagined the shock in his eyes when his meticulous plans unraveled, piece by piece, while I remained unscathed. Cassian's voice broke my thoughts. "You're precise, Eva. This is remarkable. I've never seen anyone track poison like this." I looked at him, feeling the quiet bond between us strengthen. "We do it together," I said softly. "I see, you verify. I strike, you protect." The partnership had formed. Not yet romance, but a trust born in survival. And as I inhaled the air again, noting the faint metallic tang of arsenic still clinging to Dominic's flask, I allowed a single thought to flourish. The snake in my bed will regret underestimating me. The evening air in the mansion was thick with anticipation, or perhaps it was the scent of Dominic's arrogance. He moved through the grand halls as though he owned everything, as though my very life had been nothing more than a stepping stone for his greed. I let him think he was untouchable. Let him believe I was still fragile, still weak. Cassian was with me in the library, silent and steady as always. He watched the household routines, noting the patterns, cataloging every move Dominic made. Trust had become second nature. I didn't have to explain every nuance. He anticipated, I observed, and together we were calculating the unthinkable. "The flask," I whispered, my eyes narrowing. "It's always with him. Every sip, every gesture. He's so careful yet predictable." Cassian inclined his head, understanding without question. "We'll switch it. One small swap, one calculated risk. He won't know until it's too late." I handled the silver flask with gloved hands, my heightened senses picking up the faintest trace of the poison still clinging to the interior. Using a precise mixture of harmless but violently emetic compounds, we replaced the arsenic without leaving a hint of evidence. The liquid inside would force a confession, a public unraveling, without leaving me vulnerable to legal or physical backlash. "This is it," Cassian said quietly, his eyes meeting mine with a sharp intensity. "Tonight, he walks right into it." I felt a shiver, not of fear but of controlled excitement. My senses were alive, attuned to every detail. The faint trace of Lila's perfume lingered in the hall, masking the chemical scent we had left behind for effect. I inhaled carefully, committing every nuance to memory, ensuring nothing escaped me. As the gala began, I played my role perfectly. Frail, lingering, pale, still recovering from the illness that Dominic believed had almost killed me. Every glance he gave me was laced with superiority, every movement a testament to his arrogance. Cassian stayed by my side, his hand brushing mine occasionally as we moved through the crowd. Each touch was small, deliberate, grounding. It reminded me that I was not alone, that someone capable, loyal, and trustworthy was ready to back me up. The thrill of that trust mingled with the strategy, making me sharper, faster, colder. Dominic finally took the flask, raising it to his lips, completely unaware. The room seemed to hold its breath as he drank, the taste of the emetic subtle but unmistakable to him. Within moments, he began to twitch, then speak, then stammer, a cascade of confessions spilling into the stunned silence of the gala hall. Lila's face went pale, eyes wide with horror. Dominic's arrogance melted into delirium, and all the carefully hidden crimes, the poisoning, the plotting, were laid bare. I stood back, watching, smelling the fear and deceit clinging to them both. And I felt a calm, powerful satisfaction settle into my chest. The Rose legacy would remain intact. The snake had been exposed. Cassian squeezed my hand lightly, his gaze steady, unwavering. "You did this perfectly," he said softly. I allowed myself a small, rare smile, leaning slightly into his warmth. Trust had become intimacy, subtle and potent. And as Dominic was escorted away, delirious and defeated, I realized that the alliance we had forged was no longer just strategy. It had become something deeper, something that would carry us forward long after the poison had done its work. The mansion was quiet now, a stark contrast to the chaos of the gala. Dominic had been removed, Lila exposed, and the evidence catalogued for authorities. Yet the adrenaline hadn't left me. I walked through the perfumery, inhaling the familiar scents of rose, sandalwood, and jasmine, letting the comfort of home mix with the satisfaction of victory. Cassian was close behind, as he had been all night. His presence had become a constant reassurance, a steady heartbeat in the storm of deceit and near death. He watched me carefully, not like a protector over a fragile woman, but like a partner who knew exactly how capable I was. "You handled that flawlessly," he said softly, his eyes scanning my expression. "I don't think he ever realized just how much he underestimated you." I let a small smile touch my lips. "Underestimation is the weapon of fools," I murmured. The way he leaned slightly closer when I spoke, the brush of his hand when he passed a vial, made my pulse quicken more than the adrenaline ever could. We moved through the perfumery together, checking the bottles, ensuring nothing had been tampered with in Dominic's absence. Every step was methodical, precise, yet I found myself stealing glances at him, noticing the way the lamplight caught the edges of his jaw, the faint tension in his hands easing when he was near me. "You trust me," he said quietly, almost as if reading my thoughts. "Completely." I met his gaze and nodded, feeling the truth of it resonate in me. "I do," I admitted. "You've earned it. More than anyone else ever could." His lips curved into a subtle, knowing smile. "Good. 'Cause I'll always be here. For this, and anything else that comes." There it was, a spark, barely ignited but undeniable. The thrill of trust had begun to intertwine with something warmer, something that made my chest ache in an entirely different way. It was no longer just strategy and survival. It was the recognition that I could rely on someone completely, that someone could understand me beyond my mind and senses. We paused by the scent lab, the heart of the perfumery. Cassian's hand hovered near mine, the air between us charged with unspoken possibility. I felt the heat of his presence, the quiet intensity of someone who would never betray me. I reached out, letting my fingers brush his lightly, testing the comfort of the contact. He caught my hand gently, holding it for a beat longer than necessary, and I felt a thrill of intimacy, subtle but electric. "It's all over," he said softly. "You're safe now." "Yes," I whispered, leaning slightly closer, emboldened by the trust we shared. "Thanks to you." Cassian's hand lingered at mine, thumb brushing in small, careful circles. It wasn't yet romance, not fully, but the trust we had forged in danger and strategy was beginning to awaken something more, something alive. For the first time since Dominic's betrayal, I allowed myself to feel a flicker of warmth, of connection, of something dangerously close to desire. The Rose legacy was safe, and I was no longer alone. And with Cassian by my side, I realized that the next chapter of my life, one of survival, trust, and perhaps even love, was only beginning. The mansion was silent now, save for the faint hum of the perfumery's ventilation and the soft clink of bottles as I organized the day's blends. Yet despite the quiet, my mind buzzed with anticipation, not for revenge this time, but for the subtle connection growing between Cassian and me. He moved beside me, calm and precise, yet there was a softness in his movements that had not been there before. When he handed me a vial of rare amber extract, our fingers brushed. It was brief, seemingly accidental, yet I felt a spark, tiny, electric, and utterly intoxicating. "You're careful," he murmured, his voice low, almost conspiratorial. "I like that." I tilted my head, letting the faintest smile play on my lips. "I have to be," I replied, teasing lightly. "Danger has a way of finding me, even without poison." His gaze lingered on mine, and for the first time I felt something more than trust. There was an unspoken challenge in the way he looked at me, a silent invitation. I could feel my pulse quicken as he stepped closer, the space between us charged with tension. "Eva," he began, and the way he said my name made it feel like a caress rather than a warning. My breath hitched slightly. "You don't realize how much I've come to rely on you." I placed a hand on his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath the fabric. The sensation was grounding, thrilling, and strangely intimate. "And I rely on you," I admitted softly. "More than I thought I could." Cassian leaned just a fraction closer, and I felt the warmth radiating from him. The tension between us had shifted from professional trust to something deeper, something undeniably magnetic. My fingers brushed the line of his jaw as if testing the moment, and he responded by letting his hand rest lightly on my waist, not possessively, but with a reassuring strength. "You're incredible," he whispered, his voice low and sincere. "I've never met anyone like you." I swallowed, feeling my chest tighten in a way that had nothing to do with adrenaline. "And I've never needed anyone like you," I admitted. The words hung between us, soft but potent, as if spoken aloud could make the connection real. Cassian's hand moved from my waist to the small of my back, guiding me gently toward him. Our foreheads touched briefly, a tender contact that spoke of trust, comfort, and something more, a desire to be closer without rushing, without fear. I closed my eyes for a moment, inhaling the faint scent of him mingled with the perfumery. It was grounding, intoxicating, and undeniably intimate. For the first time since Dominic's betrayal, I allowed myself to feel safe, completely and utterly safe, in someone else's presence. When I opened my eyes, he smiled softly, a mix of warmth and admiration. "We'll get through this," he said, voice low and steady. "Together." "Yes," I whispered, pressing just a little closer, letting our bodies align in a subtle, deliberate intimacy. Trust had led us here, and desire was now patiently following its lead. And as I leaned into him, feeling the warmth and strength of his presence, I knew that together we were unstoppable, not just in survival, but in love, in life, and in the reclamation of everything Dominic had tried to take from me. The mansion was quiet, but my pulse was anything but. Cassian had stayed late, helping me review the final details for the gala, the night when Dominic would face the consequences of his treachery. The air between us was charged, the tension no longer just about strategy. It had evolved into something warmer, something undeniably magnetic. He handed me a delicate vial of rare jasmine, our fingers brushing once again. This time, the touch lingered just a fraction longer, and I felt a shiver run through me. I caught his eyes, dark and intent, and for the first time our smiles weren't just about trust. They were private, teasing, aware. "You're tense," he murmured, his hand finding mine again. The warmth of his palm, the firm yet gentle pressure, made my breath hitch. "Relax. You've done everything perfectly." I allowed myself a soft laugh, leaning slightly into his touch. "Perfectly doesn't always feel safe." "Not with Dominic lurking in your life," he said, leaning closer, his lips just shy of brushing my ear. "But you won't have to face him alone. Ever again." The nearness of him, the strength in his presence, and the trust we had built over weeks of plotting and surviving together drew me in. I tilted my head, letting our foreheads touch lightly, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat beneath mine. I believe you," I whispered, the words almost trembling with the intensity of the moment. His hand slid from mine to the small of my back, pulling me slightly closer. My fingers threaded into his hair gently, a tentative, electrifying contact that sent warmth rushing through me. The perfumery, the vials, the bottles, all faded into the background. There was only the two of us, and the silent promise that had grown between us over countless shared secrets and dangers. "You're incredible," he breathed, his lips brushing my temple, his eyes never leaving mine. "I've watched you face death, betrayal, and every obstacle with a strength that leaves me in awe. But it's not just that, I care about you. More than I thought I could." The confession made my chest tighten. I leaned into him fully, letting my body mold against his. The thrill of intimacy, the heat of connection, and the reassurance of his unwavering presence were intoxicating. "I care about you too," I admitted, my voice soft but certain. "More than I can say." He smiled, deep and tender, before lowering his lips to mine. The kiss was slow at first, deliberate, a melding of trust and desire, a dance we had both been waiting for. My hands rested lightly on his shoulders, moving down to his chest, feeling the strength beneath, the safety, the steady warmth. When we finally broke apart, just enough to breathe, his forehead rested against mine, our breaths mingling. "Tonight, Dominic learns the truth," he murmured. "And after that, we start our own story." "Yes," I whispered, pressing closer, letting my cheek rest against his. Our story. Together. In that moment, amidst the scents of jasmine and sandalwood, amidst the danger that still lingered in the shadows, I realized something profound. Revenge would be sweet, but love, real, unshakable and trusted love, was infinitely more intoxicating. And as we stood there, holding each other close, I knew that nothing could break the bond we had forged. Not Dominic, not betrayal, not even death itself. The gala hall shimmered with crystal chandeliers and whispered wealth, but my eyes were fixed on one target. Dominic. Every detail had been orchestrated. Every trace of his treachery meticulously documented, every poison accounted for, every witness prepared. And yet, beneath the adrenaline of revenge, another fire burned within me. The fire that Cassian had awakened, a thrill that was equal parts trust, desire, and devotion. I moved beside him as we entered the room, our fingers brushing lightly, a subtle affirmation of the bond that had grown between us. His steady presence grounded me, and yet made my pulse race in ways no danger ever could. I had survived Dominic once, and now, with Cassian beside me, I was invincible. Dominic raised his glass, smiling faintly, the arrogance of a man who believed he was untouchable. But the smile faltered almost immediately as the emetic we had switched into his silver flask began its effect. His words slurred, then stumbled. Confusion turned to panic as he stammered, hands trembling. "Eva, what have you done?" he gasped, eyes wide and wild, a man unmasked. I stepped closer, letting the cold, clinical precision of my reborn self shine through. "You thought you could poison me, take everything I built, and walk away free," I said calmly. "But the Rose legacy isn't yours to steal, Dominic. And neither is my life." Cassian stood beside me, his hand brushing mine ever so slightly, grounding me, reminding me that I was not alone. "We documented everything," he said firmly, his eyes meeting mine in silent affirmation. "The authorities are on their way. Your reign of deceit ends tonight." Dominic's face twisted in delirium and fear as the truth spilled from him under the influence of the emetic. Every plot, every betrayal, every instance of Lila's complicity laid bare for the shocked crowd. Lila's own face drained of color as the scale of their deceit became undeniable. When the police finally arrived, they led him away, and I felt a wave of triumph, relief, and something more, something deeper. I turned to Cassian, my chest still racing not from fear or adrenaline, but from the nearness of him, from the warmth and safety that had grown between us. He stepped closer, cupping my face in his hands, and I leaned into the contact, letting myself feel the full intensity of our connection. "You were incredible," he whispered, lips brushing against mine with a feather-light touch. "Brave, brilliant, unstoppable. I couldn't have done it without you," I murmured, tilting my head as our lips met fully. A slow, deliberate kiss that spoke of trust, desire, and the bond forged in danger and shared purpose. His hands moved to my waist, pulling me closer, and I felt the warmth and strength of him, the certainty that he would never let harm come to me again. We broke apart just enough to breathe, foreheads touching, our breaths mingling. "This is our life now," he said softly, his voice low and intimate. "Together." "Yes," I whispered, smiling, letting his hand find mine again. "Together." In that moment, I realized that revenge had been satisfying, but it was nothing compared to the fire, passion, and trust one felt with Cassian. We had survived betrayal, poison, and deceit. And now, in the safety of each other's arms, the Rose legacy and my heart were truly mine to protect and cherish. The snake in my bed had been exposed, but in its place had grown something far more precious. Love, trust, and an unshakable bond that would endure far beyond the shadows of betrayal. And with Cassian I was whole,